Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another edition of Against the Odds. So last week, we had another all-hour of Devastation Against the Odds poll, and in the end, it was the new Black X-Spell, Torment of Hailfire, coming out on top. So this week, we're heading to Hour of Devastation Standard to see if we can punish our opponent with Torment of Hailfire. And I'm pretty excited for this deck. It is really interesting. We're kind of like mono black ramp, but the exciting part is we are all in on Torment of Hailfire. Basically, every single card in our deck is interacting positively with Torment of Hailfire in one way or another. So we're going to see how busted Torment of Hailfire can be if you just go all in on making it as good as possible. So it's kind of our science experiment for this episode of Against the Odds. A quick reminder before we break down Hailfire and Brimstone for Standard. We're doing a giveaway for a box of Hour of Devastation, shipping it worldwide, cracking it open on the channel so you get a shout out as well. So make sure to follow the link in the description if you want to sign up for that. Anyway, let's talk about Torment of Hailfire. So Torment of Hailfire itself is a controversial card. So it is undoubtedly powerful. The rate on this card is pretty absurd. You get to pay 2 and X, and the following process of each opponent losing 3 life unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discarded card repeats X number of times. So in theory, for like 7 of mana, Torment of Hailfire can be a 15 damage burn spell, or a sack 5 permanent. It's like, no matter how you break down what the card's doing, you're getting a pretty good deal for it. The problem, and while the card is a little bit debated and controversial, is it's a classic Punisher card. It's giving the opponent the choice of what option to take. So in theory, you can cast this X10, and instead of killing your opponent or doing something awesome, your opponent can discard 2 or 3 lands, let's say, maybe sack 2 or 3 tokens, take 9 or 12 damage, and yeah, I mean, it did a lot of good things, but none of those things actually just kill the opponent, and you're spending an insane amount of mana to get a, bunch of different effects. In some ways, think of it like this. My experience with Torment of Hailfire is almost like you play a deck that has some infect creatures and some normal damage creatures, and you're kind of killing your opponent in 2 different ways. That's what kind of, I think, is bound to happen with Torment of Hailfire in some situations. Like, you're kind of attacking the hand, you're kind of attacking the board, you're kind of dealing some damage, but we're going to see if there's any deck that can make Torment of Hailfire super awesome. I think it's our deck, because we are all in on making it good. So, of course, we want to cast Torment of Hailfire as big as possible. We want X to be a big number. So we are overloaded on ramp. We're really kind of like a mono black ramp deck. We got 3 Cultivator's Caravan, so plus 1 mana. Also can randomly crew up and get in some damage that way, which is nice. We'll talk about this as we go along, but one of the ways to kind of break Torment of Hailfire is to try to take away choices from the opponent. If you can get cards out of their hand, keep stuff off the battlefield, get their life total down, they have less choices to actually make. So if you can do those things, it makes Torment of Hailfire much better. So being able to randomly beat down with Cultivator's Caravan is a bonus. We also have Hedron Archive, one of the best ramp spells in Standard, plus 2 mana for 4 mana, plus we can always cash it in to draw cards if we're digging for Torment or something else. And then Oblivion Slower is kind of like Cultivator's Caravan. Hopefully it gives us 1 or 2 mana by stealing some lands from our opponent. Also gives us a really big body that can hopefully attack through just about anything, deal some damage. The other sweet thing about Oblivion Slower, 8 toughness is a ton. It blocks like any ground creature in the format, so it helps us stay alive while we're building up our resources for a huge Torment of Hailfire. So beyond ramping, we have a kind of backup finisher, Cruel Reality. So Cruel Reality, I just had to include it. It's kind of like Torment of Hailfire's number 5 and 6. It's kind of a Punisher card. Basically, an opponent has to sack a creature if they have an option, which works with our Torment of Hailfire because that keeps stuff off the battlefield, so they can't choose the sack stuff option as easily. And then, if they don't have any creatures, they take 5 damage. So that also works with Torment, getting the life total down taking away the pay life option when we cast our Torment. So it's a little expensive, but I imagine it can be very powerful in some situations. So beyond our finishers, we have a bunch of removals. So this is our keep stuff off the battlefield so our opponent can't just sack a bunch of random stuff. 3 Fatal Pushes, 2 Grasp of Darkness, 1 Bantu's Last Reckoning. We also have more Bantu's Last Reckoning in the sideboard for matchups where wraths are really good. And then we have a Never to Return, which remember, Torment of Hailfire actually says non-land permanent, so it doesn't say just creatures. So our opponent can sack their random artifacts, their random planeswalkers if they have to. So Never lets us kill a creature. Also gets rid of a Planeswalker. Also, the Graveyard Hate is becoming more relevant, with the Blue-White Monument deck being really powerful. Being able to exile an Aftermath card like Dusted On is really good. And then one Ob Nixilis draws us through our deck to find our Torments, kill some creatures, can be a backup finisher with the ultimate. And then we have ways to attack our opponent's hand, which remember, another option of Torment of Hailfire is just to discard cards. So if we can get our opponent low on cards in hand, they're not going to have the option to just I'm going to discard this stuff. Instead, they're going to have to sack creatures or other non-land permanents or just take the damage. So if we can get our opponent mostly empty-handed and we can keep most of the creatures off the battlefield, when we cast a Torment, our opponent's just going to have to take the damage, and then Torment is insane. When it's 7 mana, deal 15 damage, that is an insane rate on a burn spell and can just win the game on the spot. So Labor of the Heart, Transgress the Mind, little bit different, but same type of thing. 2 mana, steal something from our opponent's hand, and then 4 Thought-Knot Seers gives us some blocking, also takes a card from our opponent's hand. Then we have Gifted Aetherborn as our last non-land main deck card, and this is just to help us stay alive against aggressive decks. Good blocker, little bit of lifelink, can potentially help us crew our Cultivators, Caravans, or something if we have both of them. So just kind of a hedge for the aggressive matchups and another strong early game creature. As far as the mana base, we have some colorless lands that go along with our Hedron Archive to help us cast our Thought-Knot Seers. Ifnir Dreadlands, a land that can also kill creatures in a pinch. Gaia Reach lets us loot through our deck to find a Torment of Hailfire or Cruel Reality. Westwood Ivy can make some creatures. Seagate Wreckage, if we get out of cards, can do some card draw. And then a bunch of swamps. As far as the sideboard, kind of more of the same. We can bring in a bunch more removal if we run into aggressive creature decks. We have 3 more Bantu's Last Reckonings as our primary sweeper. One of the things I like about this deck, while we're all about Torment and every single card is based around making Torment good, we're also a sneaky good Bantu's Last Reckoning deck since we have the Cultivators, Caravans, and the Hedron Archives, which are going to untap even if we cast a Bantu's Last Reckoning. So even though we're going to lose a bunch of our mana, we're still going to have some amount of mana, hopefully, to work with thanks to our mana rocks. And then we have Labor of the Heart and Transgress the Mind, mostly for control matchups. We want to take out Fatal Pushes and Grasps if we run into Grixis control, Blue-White control, because they're just not good targets. So we bring in more discard there. Also clear away counters to make sure we can resolve our big finishers. Some more Planeswalkers, also good for control matchups, generating a repeatable advantage. And then for more aggressive decks, we got the rest of the Gifted Aetherborns and Kalitas Trader of Get to get some lifelink, do a little bit of blocking, and that is Hailfire and Brimstone for Standard, and that's our Against the Odds deck for this week. So, is this gonna work? And I honestly don't know. I think it 100% comes down to how good is Torment of Hailfire, and I'm not sure. I'm skeptical because of the Punisher card aspect. I think there's going to be times when we cast it for a ton of mana and it doesn't work out and we don't win the game because of it. But then I'm hopeful that there's also going to be times where we cast it for a ton of mana and it's just devastating and wins us the game. So it's all about the Torment of Hailfire. That's it. I mean, if Torment's good, we're going to get some wins. If Torment isn't good, we're going to have some problems because we are all in on making Torment as good as it can possibly be. The question is, how good is that? Is a deck all in on Torment of Hailfire a 8 out of 10, a 9 out of 10, a 2 out of 10, a 5 out of 10? That's what we're going to be figuring out. So anyway, that's our Against the Odds deck for this week. Torment of Hailfire for Standard. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoy the gameplay videos, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you haven't already, take a minute and click that subscribe button. It's a great way to support the channel for free, and you'll find the next video in the playlist right here.